The legendary Arthur Dayne, a character beloved despite minimal screen time in both the show and within the pages. Renowned in history as one of Westeros' greatest warriors, Dayne embodies knighthood's ideals and is the epitome of what a knight should be. Not a negative thing is paired with his name, and that in and of itself is high praise considering the world of ice and fire is not exactly one of unicorns and fairies. Dayne is something of a fan favourite character to followers of the series, and it's not hard to see why. The Sword of the Morning held to his oaths till the very end, his legendary status sparking countless theories about his fate at the Tower of Joy. But did he truly die on that day? The idea that Dayne somehow survived his encounter at the Tower of Joy is one that many fans really sink their teeth into. So I thought why not have a look at 3 of these theories, explain what they have going for them, what's going against them, and then cap it off with our own theory on what we think took place on that fateful day. Please note, like the guest right theory, none of these theories are ours except the final one, and we don't wish to claim credit for them, we're just presenting them and having a little look-see at their validity. As always guys, don't forget to like and subscribe, and here's our Discord link. We're starting the process of getting some Game of Thrones Crusader Kings campaigns going with our viewers, and so far it's been a blast. And that's everything, Tom, load it up, good buddy. So let's start off with an oldie but a goldie, and that is Qhorin Halfhand equals Arthur Dayne. After fighting with swords, in which Arthur quite obviously beats Ned's ass, good old Ned and Arthur finish the fight with words, and Ned comes to understand the importance of the little baby boy in the tower. It's generally accepted by most of the fandom that Rhaegar had clued Arthur in on Jon's importance as being the prince who was promised, so Dayne may have used this information to defuse the situation. Dayne then agrees to allow Ned to raise the boy to keep him safe and away from Robert's wrath, on the condition he raise him with the notion of joining the Night's Watch, where Dayne will be waiting for him, having assumed a new identity and taken the Black himself, allowing him to look out for Jon and guide him in his supposed destiny as Azor Ahai. So, what backs up this theory? Well, the timing is right for a start, and Qhorin seems to be about the right age to potentially be Dayne. Both are extremely honourable and dutiful to a fault, and both have very vague descriptions of their appearance, almost like George wants to eliminate people making the connection through this means. But this vagueness in turn actually makes it suspicious to some fans. After this, we have the fact that both Qhorin and Dayne are something else with a sword in hand. Qhorin even learned to fight with his left hand after losing most of his fingers on the right, and was still a better swordsman than basically everyone else around him. Even Jaime couldn't achieve this, and he's the greatest swordsman in history. You know, depending on how George is feeling that particular day. There's got to be some high-level training befitting one from a noble house, or he was 7 hells of an undiscovered prodigy. Then there's this quote from Jaime in regards to Dayne being ambidextrous. "The Sword of the Morning, who could have slain all 5 of you with his left hand while he was taking a piss with the right." You could dismiss it as hyperbole used by Jaime to hype up his hero. Other fans, however, do take it as serious in support of this theory, and there's nothing wrong with that. Then we have the subtext of the word Dawn being used quite a lot in connection with Qhorin within the text. Dawn, of course, being the name of Dayne's famously unique sword. Coincidence? Probably. Qhorin is also downright antsy to make sure he's the one who dies instead of Jon. His sacrifice was potentially motivated not just by a desire to stop the wildlings, but to ensure Jon's survival so he can fulfill his destiny as the prince who was promised. And finally, the Dayne house is quite fond of Ned, even going far enough to name a child after him, despite the fact he supposedly killed their house's most noble champion. Advocates of this theory don't think respectfully returning the ancestral sword Dawn to where it belongs is close enough to earn this kind of favor. Not me though. Have you seen Dawn? I'd be eternally grateful to have that one-of-a-kind sword given back when the new owner could have just said, "Nah, mine now." I'd fucking keep it, and so would Tom. Anyway, what goes against this theory? For a start, it just makes more sense for Jon to be the turncloak for the wildlings as a new recruit over the guy who's been killing wildlings for sport for many years, and got quite the reputation for it. Would be a hard sell for Qhorin to convince them he wants to turn cloak after all this time, that's for sure. And the real biggie that brings this house of cards down, No characters in the story have made this connection, especially one character in particular. This is reinforced when you factor in Robert's rebellion and the fact that some of the Targaryen loyalists would have chosen the Black over death. You're telling me not one of those loyalists knew who Dayne was or what he looked like. The most prominent example is of course Sir Alistair Thorne. The House of Thorne is from the Crownlands, near the King. The odds that Sir Alistair doesn't know what Dayne looks like are very slim. This is often countered with, well, maybe Thorne was clued into Dayne's purpose, but this is swiftly broken by the way Sir Alistair treats Jon. If he knew who Jon was, no fucking way would he be such a twat to him. I don't know, maybe he's overcompensating to cover his secret love for Lord Snow, but not likely. If that wasn't enough, then here's the sledgehammer. The whole point of the Night's Watch oaths are that you are forgiven your treason in your service to the Watch. In other words, Dayne has absolutely sod all reason to need to change his identity if he's taking the Black. Once he's donned that cloak, the law cannot touch him, regardless of his crimes. So why the need for the name swap and the faking of one's death? There may be a reason, I'm not ruling it out, but as of yet, no one has landed on anything solid. After this, we have to ask, why does Dayne give up Dawn? Mormont doesn't give up Longclaw, so we know it's not a Night's Watch rule. It's also speculated that Rhaegar and Dayne might have figured out that Dawn is the original Lightbringer. If it is Dayne's intention to watch out for Jon and prepare him to be the prince who was promised, surely keeping Dawn at the Wall ready for Jon to have would be the smart move. Though the Wall is full of thieves and Dayne will slow down as he gets older, Starfall is likely a much safer place for a blade of such significance to be kept. Also, Dawn is a pretty solid ID card, and if Dayne's trying to lay low for some reason, it's probably best not to be in possession of the only sword of its kind famously connected to one house for at least 2,000 years. One final thing against this theory, what was Howland Reed's part? Ned makes it clear Reed saved his life from certain death, but if Dayne's the one who stops the fight, there is no need for Reed to jump in, although this could be dismissed with the notion that it's actually Reed who breaks up the fight. So, what do we at the Fandome think of this theory? It's definitely plausible, but I wouldn't call it solid like you can argue with stronger theories like R+L=J, Oberyn poisoning Tywin, and the Gravedigger theory. So on to the next one. Now this theory isn't as widely known, but it's quite an interesting one despite its simplicity. Howland Reed equals Arthur Dayne. Now, give me a second to explain before you start typing your accusations of preposterousness or petty insults, please. So, the idea is Ned and his gang cut down Sir Went and Sir Hightower, and Arthur is the last one standing. Arthur Dayne, being Arthur motherfucking Dayne, cuts down everyone but Ned and Howland Reed. He then proceeds to mortally wound Reed before turning to face Ned. Only before Dayne can make Ned dead, hey, that rhymed, Tom, Howland walks into Arthur Dayne a la Bran walking Hodor. Only Reed doesn't leave Dayne's body as his own vessel is now very dead. So, what's this theory got going for it? Well, we know the Northmen tend to have a stronger affinity for warging, and while it's not confirmed that Howland is a warg, you certainly can't rule it out. We know so little about the guy, but one thing we do know is he spent time on the Isle of Faces trying to find the Green Men. Maybe he found them, and maybe they awakened and helped him hone his abilities. Another point of favor is that as of yet in the story, no one has seen Howland Reed, and those who have seen him and make mention of him were born post the events of the Tower of Joy, so they don't have a reliable frame of reference with which to describe him. He's one of Ned's oldest and dearest friends, which makes his absence in the story early on, especially when there was still a chance to save Ned during Robb's march south, a little suspicious to the eyes of many fans, and all he really did was keep the neck secure during the War of the Five Kings. The final point of favor is Ned and Reed are Ned and Reed. Decent warriors, no doubt, but Arthur Dayne is Arthur motherfucking Dayne. Only Jaime and Selmy are held in a similar confidence with their swordsmanship, and Jaime cut through 10 to 20 guys to try and get to Robb. And the only reason he was stopped was because his damn sword got stuck in someone's head. It was 7-on-3 at the Tower of Joy. The odds for Dayne, Went, and Hightower were far better than that of Jaime. And yet, Dayne was beaten by two swordsmen who were above average at best. That dog won't hunt, says the fans. There had to be foul play beyond a bit of backstabbing, says the fans. And now for the points against this theory. We have no proof Howland Reed is a warg, that's pure speculation, though I think it's perfectly reasonable to assume he might be one. But how was Reed welcomed back to his homeland by his people and granted his lordship over the neck if he was in a new body? Perhaps he could have given a good speech, and perhaps the Crannog men have more stock in magic and are more open to it, but seriously, one of the Kingsguard to your kingdom's current mortal enemy rocks up, claims to be your liege lord, and everyone is just okay with that. People must really bloody trust Ned Stark's word, because that's the only way I see anyone believing that kind of story. To really put the nail in this coffin, we have the story of Varamir Sixskins, a wildling warg who was dying and tried to take over the body of Thistle, a wildling woman, who was driven mad in the process. Arthur Dayne wouldn't be any easier, and it's a Herculean task to try and take over another human and do so for life. Bran fucking broke Hodor when he did it, and Bran is special even by warg standards. What chance has a regular warg got? Also, it gets a bit murky. Where did Howland go after the Tower of Joy, considering Ned went to Starfall? Did he ask Arthur Reed to stand outside the gates while he took care of business inside? Isn't Ashara Dayne supposed to be Mira and Jojen's mother? Wouldn't that be a bit creepy to be banging your brother's body? Ugh, Tom, why did you put this in my notes? I know why, but still, gross. So, our thoughts on this theory? I mean, it's pretty good and plausible. You can't prove it did happen, but you also can't prove it didn't. Yet. But a fan theory is at its strongest when there is evidence in favor of it, not a lack of evidence against it. And so I don't think it has as strong foundations as other more popular theories like R+L=J. On to the final theory before it's our turn. And that theory is the OG. Arthur Dayne simply lives and is currently in exile. The OG theory stands on the premise that both Dayne and Ned were stand-up guys who had absolutely no reason to fight, much like the half-hand theory mentioned earlier. Where this theory diverges is that rather than joining the Night's Watch and becoming Qhorin half-hand, Arthur goes into exile for his failure to protect Prince Rhaegar and the fact he had to forsake his vows as a Kingsguard in order to uphold the more important vow Rhaegar made him swear, which we can all assume relates to the Azor Ahai prophecy. Ned takes over the duty of protecting Jon and helps Dayne fake his death so he can go into exile without disturbance, ready for when the plot decides he is needed. What's this theory got going for it? There is some truth in the fact that Ned and Arthur Dayne had absolutely no reason to fight. The war was over and Ned wasn't riding up to kill the last legitimate Targaryen. He had very clearly come to save his sister, which with a few calm words would have been made clear wasn't necessary. Again, Arthur Dayne is Arthur motherfucking Dayne. Many fans just cannot reconcile him suffering defeat at the hands of Ned and Reed. There is also an assumption made with this theory that both Rhaegar and Dayne figure out that Dorne is possibly the original Lightbringer. It makes sense for Ned to take it back to Starfall, where it will be safe, ready for Jon to claim it when he needs it, rather than the random places Dayne might end up in his exile. Which of course links into the potential hijinks and extending theories regarding Ashara Dayne, but this video is already looking long, so we'll do those another time, eh Tom? It also makes sense for Dayne to give up Dorne if he's faking his death, because like the half-hand theory, Dorne is one of a kind and like Narsillis for Aragon, would function as a pretty big ID card for who he is. And that's it really, so what's this theory got going against it? Well, there clearly was a fight, because people did die. Like the half-hand theory, you can write this off though by saying the situation started violently and then went to words when it was just Dayne, Ned and Reed. With Reed of course being the one to step in and put an end to the fight to circle it back to Ned's quote. But why would Dayne trust that Ned could protect Jon better than himself? If anything, letting Ned take Jon puts him at greater risk than Dayne watching over the boy somewhere in secret. How the fuck did they know that Jon would, definitely, beyond any shred of a doubt, keep the black hair of the Starks and not develop the silver hair and violet eyes of the Targaryens? It's a well-known fact that a baby's hair and eye color can change as they grow up. Just saying, that would have been fucking awkward for Ned to explain away. Also, why would Dayne fake his death and go into exile and do absolutely nothing? It really doesn't fit the bill for what we know of the guy. He's supposedly an exemplar of knightly values, and the oaths he swore as a Kingsguard are lifelong oaths. Sure, Rhaegar and the Mad King are dead, but there is Dany and Viserys, both of whom are heirs to the house he swore fealty to, and both of whom could have greatly used his help in remaining safe, and being as honor-bound as the story makes him out to be, Dayne surely would have gone to protect them, and yet we have not even a single hint that he did anything to so much as find them, let alone protect them. And finally, what the fuck was Dayne's plan if another of his house proved themselves worthy of Dawn? That would have been an awkward conversation between Jon and whichever Dayne had claimed it. Give me your sword, mate. Last person to use it said I could have it.
No. And might I remind you what it takes to claim this sword, Lord Snow? You sure you want to fight me for it?
Aye, people in the north say I'm the greatest swordsman who ever walked.
You're a 16-year-old boy. This isn't the show, Lord Snow. This is the real story.
Oh, fuck. As you can tell, our thoughts on the OG theory are not all that positive. It's plausible like the half-hand theory, but unlike the half-hand theory, it just doesn't sit right with us that a man of action like Dayne would sit on his ass and do nothing. All while 2 Targaryen heirs are still alive, and he is in possession of the knowledge that the fate of the living depends on little Jon Snow. At least the half-hand theory shows us that Dayne is still working within the interests of these potential Azor Ahai vows that he may have made to Rhaegar. So, that's others' thoughts and theories, but what about ours? Here at the Fandome, we have turned every page, looked under every stone, in every nook and cranny, and what we have uncovered is a complex narrative and sophisticated web of interlocking theories that are beyond the point of scrutiny and... Look, guys, Arthur Dayne died at the Tower of Joy, okay? We can sit here and list off the common points that really wreck the notion that he's alive, like the number of cairns/graves matching the number of dead, including for Dayne. The use of the word they when Ned is found with Lyanna's body is almost certainly referring to a wet nurse or maester that's with Howland, or direct lines like this that have no reason to lie because they are from inside Ned's head. Hey, that rhymed again, Tom. But instead, let's talk about Arthur and what he means for the narrative he is a part of. In any other fictional universe, Sir Arthur would be the paragon the protagonist looks up to and learns from. The hero of the old ways that sets the standard the new heroes must meet and eventually exceed. In his youth, he would be the prequel version of Obi-Wan. In his later years, he would be the old version of Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan's actually a damn good comparison for what type of character Dayne is supposed to be. But in his world, Sir Arthur serves less as a character and more as a valuable lesson for those who delve into the world of ice and fire. I mean, what do we actually know about this guy? Honestly, he's the best swordsman alive during his era and has a cool sword. He's honorable, chivalrous, and heroic. He believes in the sanctity of vows and oaths, and that's about it. The world of Ice and Fire is filled with deep, complex characters who are neither fully good nor fully evil, and by comparison, Dayne is actually rather shallow. Even the more virtuous characters like Jon have these little personality flaws and moments of pettiness, and the more morally questionable characters, with the exception of walking ASPD adverts like Ramsay and Gregor, have many redeeming traits that remind us that these characters, whether you think they are good or bad, are at the end of the day very much human. Arthur is kind of just above all that. He's almost perfect, even more so than Grandpa Selmy, and that really is saying something. I'm not saying the guy didn't have feelings or never put a foot wrong. Even Selmy himself had feelings for Ashara Dayne. But we can only go with what we're shown and given about Arthur, and because of what little information we have about Arthur paints him as a near-perfect heroic knight, it actually makes Arthur one of the least human characters in the series. He's more like a character from Old Nan's stories than anything. He is, in a sense, more symbol than person. In my opinion, George uses this symbol to teach and reinforce some very important elements about his world. Number 1. Power levels are bullshit and do not exist. The circumstances of the day matter way more. Dayne's death is a teachable moment, that being the best swordsman in the realm alone won't carry you through a fight if the odds or circumstances of the day aren't on your side. Dayne going out the way he did with a knife in the back is the antithesis of how a hero of his caliber should go out. Number 2. The world of Ice and Fire holds itself closer to realism than other fantasy universes. Ask anyone who's ever tried to take on more than one opponent in HEMA with similar length weapons. Just one extra opponent drastically cuts your odds by way more than half, no matter how good you are. In Lord of the Rings, if Aragorn is surrounded by 20 orcs, you know our favorite heir of Isildur is going to be surrounded by 20 corpses shortly after. In George's world, however, if the hero is surrounded by 20 foes, you should really fear turning that page. It's no different for Dayne. Even with his 2 fellow Kingsguard, they were outnumbered 7-3. That's 2 for each man, with an extra to stab someone in the back when needed. And number 3, honor is a fool's prize and will get you killed. Combat is a frantic, chaotic mess in real life, and the world of Ice and Fire emulates this. If you believe there are rules and try to play by them, like Dayne evidently does, I mean, just look at his fight with the Smiling Knight, he let that guy have a second sword after his first was ruined by Dawn, then that can be used to put an end to you by someone who understands this is a world with only the illusion of rules, and that they are there to be broken. We don't know if Reed stabs an unsuspecting Arthur from behind in the books, but I'm willing to bet good money that is what happens. That or Reed trips Arthur up with his net while the Sword of the Morning is advancing on Ned. The point I'm making is George is using Dayne's death to teach us that it's not whoever is the most honorable and skilled that wins fights in his world. It's whoever is willing to do whatever it takes in order to not die. I believe the death of Sir Arthur is a very on-the-nose way for George to strongly underscore what type of fictional world you are dealing with. It's gritty, it's chaotic, and it isn't fair. And it's for these reasons we at the Fandome believe Dayne's body is resting under his cairn at the Tower of Joy. Now this doesn't make Arthur any less of a badass. It's just the world of Ice and Fire is not meant for heroes like him, and George wants you to know that. Rest in peace, Sir Arthur. Rest in peace. And we'll wrap it up there. Please note all these theories, including ours, are just the opinions and ideas of others. Don't go dumping on them if you disagree. There's enough toxicity on this World Wide Web of ours. Don't go adding to the pile. We would, however, like to add your ideas to the conversation. Do you have any thoughts and theories regarding the fabled Sword of the Morning and his fate? Let us know in the comments.